Yeah, there's a lot of public anger with the shenanigans with a reporter for Rebel News being arrested for allegedly assaulting a member of the RCMP. Now, whether you like David Menzies or his employer's brand of news reporting or not, it's clear from the video the officer was the aggressor and the one out of line. I mean, he deserves what will come from an internal investigation and the civil suit that will be filed against him. He's created a negative, bully-like image of Canadian law enforcement, and that's not indicative of the vast majority of those who choose to protect and serve. I mean, it's garnered worldwide attention, possibly because it relates to the PM's office and his senior minister and a perception of overreach by the government that appears to be a trend, I think. I mean, this is just another in a series of embarrassing moments for Canada. Now, regardless, I still support our law enforcement agencies and what they stand for. I know this may not be a popular opinion with some who have experienced some personal, less than pleasant encounters with law enforcement, but most people also couldn't do their job. I mean, going back several years, sentiment for law enforcement took a beating when lockdowns were ordered by the government. That time in history evoked stories from people who felt abuse at the hands of officers in forcing limited gathering sizes, mask mandates, and isolation following travel. Now, in retrospect, the whole lockdown era was outrageous, rather, and will be looked back upon in time as a totalitarian nightmare, and hopefully a time never to be repeated again. Now, sadly, officers were compelled to enforce the mandates as frontline workers by their governing authorities. And after speaking to several officers, I know they were generally conflicted in enforcing such rules. I mean, there's no doubt some took it quite literally, and their interactions with the public were shamefully verbal and physical. I mean, who can forget the embarrassing acts of two officers who threatened to taser a young man playing hockey with his friends, not to mention cutting off his skates, all because there were more than 6 players on the ice. I mean, in that case, ego overtook better judgment. I mean, and it's a time most of us and many officers, I'm sure, wish to forget. You know, I'll also relate back to a special ride-along I experienced with a friend of mine in the RCMP. I had the opportunity to spend time on one of the First Nation reserves in Alberta during that ride. I met some in the detachment, the GM of the reserve, and some of the elders. Now, the enthusiasm to be a part of their community and to serve and protect the residents was indisputable, and I was able to view their interaction. And after that ride-along, I better understood the challenges faced by the community in general and the actions taken to enhance and integrate the RCMP into it. I left there with a deeper respect for the ideals these men and women in the service represent. And I would encourage those of you who doubt what I'm saying to go on a ride-along sometime and gain your own perspective. Now, my point is that law enforcement is not an easy job. I mean, when one is tasked with responding to crimes which include assault, break-ins, accidents, and much, much, much more, the expectations of these frontline workers is to deal with it, so the public doesn't have to. They are there to keep the peace, enforce the law, de-escalate tensions, and act as community outreach, and at the same time, present a positive image in the community. I mean, they're human, and they're subject to the same emotions as you and I. That's why some eventually leave for a less contrived career path. Some are subjected to mental health issues created by the situations they experience, while others continue to do what they feel passionate about, regardless of themselves. They are your neighbors, your friends, and from what I've learned, their training exceeds what our neighbors to the south receive. Today, we live in a world where everyone has a phone with a camera and a willingness to, photograph and record daily life, including the interactions like the one I just mentioned. There's always a focus on how police are abusing their perceived power. Now, this case is unique, and I suspect falls under their strict instructions from the PM's office, partially with respect to their apparent aversion to non-mainstream media. But there are many positive interactions that law enforcement have with the community at large that deserves attention and never seems to be presented in the news or on social media. That needs to change by starting at the top. Again, most of us could never do the job they signed up for. Now, I'm not giving a pass to the officers involved in the unnecessary assault on Mr. Menzies. It highlights poor decision-making regardless of their instructions, and it tarnishes those who uphold the law and their professionalism. Considering the worldwide press on this issue, a quick completion of the investigation, a public apology, and a suspension could be ordered. And in fairness, it should begin with a change in the attitude at the PM's office. Now, until then, I believe we need to support our officers, consider the cause, and let's get away from more division and hatred. There's already been enough in Canada.